And welcome to another virtual panel for OC Paracon. This one's going to be a fun one. This is a guest that has been on. He was on last year, and then we finished up the that fun year that we had of 2020 last year with some predictions. And here's the best part: a lot of them are coming absolutely true. Vernon Mahabal, who's the founder and director of the Palmistry Institute in Los Angeles. I'll give you 5 guesses. The first 4 don't count. Where it's located. You can go to palmistryinstitute.com to find out everything and hopefully get a reading from Vernon. Vernon, how are you? Good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Henry. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah. So for those of you that are wondering and hearing about you for the first time, they think they have an idea. No, I've seen palm readers. That's first of all, tell them that's not what you do. You're not a palm reader. So explain what the art of palmistry is that you use.
Palmistry is actually not different than astrology. It's the same exact art, except we use a hand and astrologers use a chart on a computer. Palmistry adds an extra depth to it, I think, because the hands radiate intuition, and palmists are really good at picking that intuition up. So we see everything an astrologer sees: the signs, the houses, the planets, the elements, whatever an astrologer can see on their chart, a palmist can also see on the hand. So the human hand for us is an astrological chart. And at the same time, we're picking up the psychic energies, if you will, on the hand, and we can make the reading a lot deeper because of that. So let's just say you see on somebody's hand that they're going to take a trip to Europe. And you could look at the different planetary aspects. Mars is in this house, Venus is in that house, and this sign is in that sign, and this planet is crashing into that planet, and you can make you can make a prediction that they're going to go to Europe. And then when you use your intuition, you can say, hey, you're going to go to Poland, or that type of thing. So that's not the easiest thing in astrology, but in hand analysis, it is easy because, again, the intuition that's radiating from the hand deepens the reading, and you're reading around the planets. So it's very, very powerful. That's not to say I don't love astrology, but I am definitely biased because I think palmistry is much deeper in a metaphysical way because of that. Astrologers do tend to be very data oriented, very scientifically oriented in how they look at the chart, which is good. And people who come to palmistry tend to be a little bit more psychic or intuitive, so they need to do more homework looking at the planets. But if they do, palmistry to me is the most powerful to me it's the most powerful divination tool there is.
Well, let me add in my 2 cents, maybe $20 worth, because yes, I'll say a little bit biased because you were kind enough to do a reading for me, I think earlier this year, and everything that you've and again we know each other, but I've never really told you too much about my background. Everything you told me from my past lives that I didn't even know, wasn't aware of, it made perfect sense, and everything that you've told me that was going to happen or could happen, it's been happening. I tried to on purpose not do it. Well, let me see if I can change a little bit what Vernon told me, but no, it's happening. Also, a lot of things that you told me that were going to happen, you've said it on episodes of Paranormal Perception, things that are going to happen in the world, they've been happening. Boy, have they. We'll get into that in a second. So those of you that are wondering, like, oh, well, is this for real? Yes, it is. I can tell you it is very real. It is very accurate. I know some astrologers. I've had them on the show. Some are friends. We're not saying that they don't know what they're doing. They do, but I'm on board with you, Vernon. That I do see palmistry as a little bit more accurate, and again, because you're looking at past lives and what comes into the current lives now. So when you're looking at, when you're reading somebody's palms, because there's, explain this also, but some people may not know this, some may not know this. This was I wasn't aware of this when I first met you. I learned this from you. That was mind-blowing to me. 7 billion people in the world, each one of us our palms are completely different. Both palms are completely different. So no two person are the same. But talk a little bit about that, and also what exactly you're looking at when you're reading someone's palms.
Oh, that's a great point. We are part and parcel of God, according to the Vedic or the Eastern palmistry and astrology, sometimes called Jyotish. We're part and parcel of God, and at the same time, we're individuals. So God's an individual, although He's the supreme person. He creates us also individually. So there's a loving relationship there. Without individuality, there's no love cannot be exchanged. The thing about in the New Age world, it's loosely called the mind, body, spirit, New Age world, they understand the idea of oneness, which means that we're one with the divine, the divine or God. We're of that same energy. In Sanskrit, it's called Brahman. So yes, it is true that there's a oneness. Where just like every drop of the ocean contains all of the minerals and stuff floating in the ocean, we are one. But at the same time, the beauty of us is that God creates us as individuals. We all have and we all have a way of looking at life and doing things and in our own way, and that's the beauty of life. In that individuality is beauty, because that's the way that we share love. Oneness cannot produce love. Oneness does not exacerbate love. It just it says that we're the same, and it can make one peaceful. But at the same time, love cannot be exchanged. Emotion, feeling cannot be exchanged through oneness. Whereas individuality, that's the gold standard of who we are. So because each individual soul, we're not this body. First of all, we're spiritual souls. The soul is in Sanskrit again called Satchit Ananda, means we're joyous, we're full of knowledge, we're blissful, we're aware, and we're eternal. And the constitutional position of the soul is to serve others. So we're not this body, we're spiritual souls, and that's our real nature, to serve, to give help and support and love to other people. So this is seen on the hand. In other words, our individualism, our individuality, our individual destiny is seen on the hands, and that is the beauty. In other words, our what makes us different from others is it is what we're looking at in the hand. If we all did everything the same way, it'd be boring. Now, why does, according to the Vedic view, why does God create us individually, as individuals? Because we have an individual relationship with the Supreme Lord, and there's service or devotion that we do that cannot be replaced by the billions and billions of other individuals. So we do something for the Supreme Lord that's irreplaceable, you see. And the Supreme Lord relates to us as individuals completely individually also. So this beauty, love is beauty. Beauty is love. That's the bottom line. Love is beauty. Beauty is love. And this beauty of individuality is seen on the hands. And that's what individualizes us, and that's what makes us who we are. And so in a very metaphysical way, the job of a palmist is to look at who we are as individuals, what our individual destiny is, what our path is, how to bring out, and what I've seen, Henry, is that when people take that risk to live their passion and do what they're born to do, and as Tony Robbins says, awaken the giant within, that's when we become happy. We become happy when we are honing our individuality. We're bringing out our personal identity. We're doing our own thing. People can be satisfied if they're doing a job but they're never really fulfilled unless they're doing a career that is their destiny. Doesn't mean they have to start their own business all the time, but at the same time, the happiest people are fulfilling their own individualistic purpose, and that's the goal.
Yeah, that actually makes me think of something that I saw, and I'm obviously I'm not a palmist like you, but did you see this when you were reading it? If you read anybody for last year for 2020, I met so many people, and I know so many people. Some are here in our staff, as a matter of fact, who had this epiphany, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, from last year, where kind of like what you're saying, that they realized, I don't want to do this anymore. Sometimes some of them lost their job because they were furloughed because of the pandemic. The positions were eliminated, and that was the final push that they needed to wake up and say, I don't want to do this. I'm not satisfied. I'm not happy.
I'm not having it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So did you see a lot of that in people whose palms you read last year?
Actually, that's a brilliant realization, Henry. A lot of people did feel a little bit freer, and they did have the time to reflect and introspect a lot more than they did. So even though the New World Order wanted to lock down everybody and take away everybody's freedoms, at the same time, it did, as you're saying, gave a lot of people the time to introspect and to think about who they are. And maybe that will start the next phase of rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, hold that
They
thought,
created
because
a monster.
hold that thought. I do want to get into detail with that, because the New World Order, well, I mean, there might be some supernatural element to it, but the other ones, the puppets, if you want to call them that, they are human. They do have palms, so you can see what they're up to also. But let me go back to looking at people, reading people's palms. So if I'm understanding you correctly from what you're saying, and I'm sure there's a few viewers who are probably thinking the same thing, so I'll ask for them. Does that mean that you can actually tell someone if they come to you and say, Vernon, can you tell me, what's in store for me? Can you, or what? Let's put it this way: what can you tell them? Can you tell them about their love life, their career? What can you tell them through their palm?
Henry, people say quite a lot that life doesn't come with instructions. Palmists don't believe that. All the instructions are on our hands. This is our instructional sheet. When you buy something, there's always instructions. Well, this is our instructional sheet. And for thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years, all the great cultures, the Egyptians, the Hindus, the Atlanteans, the Mayans, no matter where you go on this planet, for millions of years, the great ancient predecessors, they used palmistry as a tool to understand each individual destiny. What is this person going to accomplish? In fact, there's a book, the earliest written book, it's written in Sanskrit. It was written by a great palmist who was also an astrologer. His name was Garga Muni, and he wrote this book in 3100 BC. It's completely in Sanskrit and it's been translated. It's called the Hast Samudraka Shastra. Hast means hand, Samudraka means the divine science, and Shastra means a scripture, believe it or not. So the entire translation of the Hast Samudraka Shastra means the divine science of understanding the individualistic human destiny as they have descended on this planet. That's what it actually means. So a lot of Christians erroneously think that these planets and these planetary energies are satanic, that it's the devil's work. But actually, the Vedic literature state that Lord Vishnu puts these planets up. These energies, these planets are God's energies. So the influences that they have on us is benefic. It's auspicious because they're created by God. They're not created by Satan. My God, that's ridiculous. So everything in the Vedic view, the planetary energies, they're a divine energy because they're directly created by God. For instance, we live on the planet Earth, And if we were in another planet like Saturn, an astrologer or a palmist will say, oh, well, the earth isn't a good house for you. And what it's doing is it gives you peace and coolness and evenness in difficulties and struggles. And that's what the earth does. The earth itself as a planet she's very patient. And and the influences that she has on other entities on other planets in our universe is that as a planet of is peace and balance and harmony. So just like Mercury has an influence on us of communications, that's where the idea now, I like how it's entered into our vocabulary, Mercury retrograde, which communications are just screwed up. I think it's great that it's become Mercury retrograde has become mainstream. But the point is that these planets have influences over human nature and character. And roughly, Henry, about 200 years ago, the astrologer was not different from an astronomer. In other words, the astronomer believed that these planets had influence over human nature and also destiny of social trends or nations. Around 200 years ago, with the advent of the modern scientific, the atheistic worldview, where today you have university professors that don't even believe in God, they don't even believe in consciousness. So they don't even believe in the soul or anything like that. So the divide came about 200 years ago where an astronomer did not believe in planetary influences. Whereas the Hasta Samruddhika Shastra talks about planetary influences and how they move forward human destiny and culture, you see. So it's a divine science, palmistry. And interestingly enough, there's a part in the book that talks about the fact that, of course, in this day and age, parents give the kid a name. But actually, in about 5,000 years ago, and even previous to that, when people had a child, they would actually bring in an astrologer or a palmist, and they would give the kid a name based on that person's astrological karma and destiny. The name came from the astrologer because that astrologer or palmist could see that person's talents and abilities. Isn't that interesting? So when we're looking at a hand, we're seeing lifetimes of destiny, what a person did in their previous life, what their talents were, what they aimed for, what abilities they have, and also the challenges in their life, you see. And this is all seen on the hand, especially in the fingerprints. Our fingerprints are actually, the fingerprints actually tell the palmist what a person's life challenges were. They tell a person's life purpose, but they also explain what challenges or obstacles a person had from their previous life. So our destiny, our individuality, the reason why we were born. In other words, we're all born for a particular reason, to fulfill a destiny. And unfortunately, in this society, this atheistic society, most people are waylaid from what their dharma, if you will, is. So a lot of times people, Henry, they ask me, oh, what do you tell some, if you see something on a person's hand and you see it's bad, you tell someone. And most people are thinking bad means, of course, accidents, health issues, car crashes, death, of course, yes. But really what I see more frequently as bad is that people are engaged in completely the wrong career. They're with the wrong partner. They're living in the wrong place. And that screws everything up. So in the past ages, when our ancient societies, our much more advanced ancient societies, had an astrologer or palmist look at a child's hand, they told the parents, hey, this is the destiny. This is what this child should get into. They should become an architect or a writer or a playwright, et cetera, et cetera. So that child and those parents always had that imprint of where to place their child. And it's interesting too, because I will tell you this, Henry, 99% of the time when I say, hey, let's say I'm looking at someone's hand and I say, you know what, you should have become an architect or an interior designer. And she'll look at me and she'll say, that's exactly what I wanted to do after high school. But my parents talked me out of it. They said I would never make it, or that the school guidance counselor also talked me out of it. So this atheistic culture of not understanding consciousness and not understanding human destiny and not understanding previous lives is constantly taking people off their path. And that's why we have a culture that's so far away from understanding their greatness, so far away from living their passion. People just get jobs so that they can, maintain their lives, but they're not doing their passion. They're not living what they're born to do. They're not bringing out their greatness. Occasionally, we do see people like a Steve Jobs who understood that. And he went even way beyond his destiny, actually. He trusted his inner vision. He trusted his intuition, and look what he did, you see. So there are people like that on the planet, but they're far and few. So the job of the palmist is to say, this is what you're born to do. And I always have this experience. When a professional palmist tells a seasoned professional palmist or astrologer tells a person, this is what your talents are, this is what you're born to do, people will always feel they resonate with it. They'll always say, well, you're not telling me anything I don't know about myself. So our job is to get people getting readings when they're 20 so that they don't waste their time.
Well, actually, that I was going to say something, but I just thought of something as you said that. Can you read it? I mean, and you and I were parents, so we know when people are born, when they're babies, they have their hands are fists. It's hard to open them. So can you look at a newborn or a baby and tell what their life is going to be?
Yeah, well, that is a problem that palmists do have, keeping the child's hands open for a while. But after like 6 or 7 months, it's easier. The mom or the dad can coax the kid to keep their hands open for a while. But the interesting thing is that everything is on that child's hand as they leave the womb. Everything is on that child's hand. It's just in miniature.
Yeah.
But my experience is that a lot of times people will get a reading and they'll bring their son or daughter to me when they're like 5 or 6 or 7, and then there's no problem there. And then parents have a greater understanding of their kids also. If you're telling someone that their boy is going to be very much into sports and play baseball or something like that, and they're already like 10 or 11 or 12, they'll have a very good understanding of them. And you can tell when they're a little bit older, 12, 13, 14, you can tell the parents a lot more, and the kid too, a lot more about their emotions and their feelings and their psychological their psychology, and it's a lot easier for them to assimilate after that. So sometimes it's actually easier, but to look at a person's hand when they're a little bit older. But the fact is that everything's on the hand in miniature. In fact, the Navajo Indians had a prophecy. I don't know if it's a prophecy, but it was a legend. But it's not a legend, it's true. They felt that at 7 months, God blows his breath on the child's hand. And though that breath of God becomes the fingerprints. That's exactly what they have seen with ultrasound. Health professionals, they've actually seen that the fingerprints, the lines, they're all formed in the womb by 7 months. So interestingly enough, even the Vedic palmistry will say that at 7 months, I mean, the kid is, the soul is fully conscious. I mean, they're not conscious of that they're being born or that they're in their mom's womb, but this from conception, there's life. But at 7 months, the Vedic view says that the child within the womb is seeing their previous births. They're actually seeing their previous births. They're seeing it inside of their mind. And as they're born, within their first months, 2 months, 3 months, they're actually remembering their previous lives. They're becoming acclimated with their parents and their social situation and their house and like that. And as they continue to do so, after 5 or 6 months, the Vedic view says that they stop remembering their previous lives and they start becoming more acclimated with this life. But so we see so many different mannerisms and the way kids move, and they're in another world. What world are they in? Where they're remembering their previous lives. So, and then of course they forget that over a few months. But the fact is that the soul is fully alive in the womb. At 7 months, when the Navajo say that God blows his breath on the child's hands, and that breath becomes the fingerprints. Well, it's interesting that the Vedic view says exactly the same thing, that at 7 months, the soul goes internal and remembers their previous births. You see.
So what you're describing actually sounds a little bit like reincarnation. Is it anything like it, or is it something completely different?
Reincarnation is best said as transmigration of the soul. In other words, we're not this body, Henry. We're not this body. This body that we have, it's just like we put on a new shirt every 80 or 90 years, a new pair of pants. The body is not the self. It's simply a material vehicle. The soul is eternal, and we've had uncountable lives. We've been in this material world since time immemorial. We're not really meant to be here. We're eternal. We're full of joy. We're full of awareness. We have knowledge. But while we're in this material world, we have our culture, especially this materialistic culture, has us identify with this body. And this whole idea of racism. I mean, it's the philosophy of a dog. I mean, when dogs see another dog, they bark. I mean, this is the most, to see people as the color of the pigment of their skin is the most materialistic, most inane way of seeing a human being. Because, somebody may be white in this life and be black in another life. Somebody may be a human being in this life and be a bear in the next life. The body is just so temporary. So people who identify with the pigment of the skin, they say, oh, this person's white, this person's black, this person's blue. It's really the lowest standard of human awareness. It's not even human awareness. It's the way animals think. We're better than that. We're human beings. We are here to understand our spiritual nature. And our spiritual nature is the very first step in spiritual life. The very first understanding, the kindergarten understanding of spiritual life is that we are not this body. We are spiritual soul. We're in this body for a temporary amount of time. And we've had billions of births. Now, when a palmist looks at a person's hand, they don't need to look at more than 3 or 4 lifetimes to see where a person came from, what they did, what makes them happy, what makes them fulfilled. There's no real need to. In fact, they talk about soulmates a lot. Well, the idea is that soulmates last seven lifetimes at the most. That's about as long as I've ever seen.
You're telling people the actual definition of, well, I know, especially on the younger side, they love saying I'm woke. The way you just said, it sounds like that's how you wake up.
Exactly. I mean, absolutely. When people, there's a certain amount of intelligent discernment when people say, what are these chemtrails? Or they wake up to the fact that vaccines are not really what they say they are. When people wake up to the fact that their news outlets are not really telling the truth. There's a certain amount of intelligent perception there. But higher than that, and more importantly, is that we're here ultimately for self-realization, to understand that our spiritual nature, to understand that we're not this body. And what is that spiritual nature? Ultimately, love, devotion.
So for everybody watching this, though, I will say this. I know you want to hear more. We're going to talk about Vernon's books in just a second. I'll have a link also at the bottom of the video where you can get them. But before we start to wrap up, let's maybe scare you a little bit. And I know it's October 1st as this comes out. It's OC Paracon. We talk about, the spooky stuff, the spooky season. What we're about to talk about is going to scare you, mainly because it's not ghosts, not goblins, not witches. It's real. It's your world. We've talked about this, Vernon, when you come on Paranormal Perception before. So everybody keeps saying, since 2020 and into now, people keep saying, in this, we don't know the kind of world we're living in, the new normal. I think we know the kind of world we're going to live in now. I think we know what the new normal is, not a good one. So how, if at all, how does reading palms, what are palms have been telling you that's coming for us in the very near future?
I've been noticing this in a big way since 2020, and of course, even before that, 2019. But as a year, 22 will be a tenacious year, Henry. What we're seeing in Australia is going to happen all over the world. I read the hands of a lot of people in the financial world, people who do everything from working in the banking system to buying Bitcoin, on and on and on and on. And everybody's telling me that they're fearful of the economic or financial world just collapsing all over the place. I mean, I read for an investor the other 3 days ago, and he was telling me China is not in that great shape. People have this idea that China's in this great economic shape. He was telling me that no, it's China is in difficult straits right now. On a more social level, what we're seeing in Australia is going to happen more and more around the world, including our country, which is that the cabal is going to. I mean, they already got away with locking us down in 220, and half the population was okay with it. The other half kind of just in good faith went along with it. So now they've seen how far they can get with it. And Australia is like the testing ground of the New World Order. Nobody can leave, nobody can come in. So it's like the testing ground. So we're seeing it starting to explode. So they're gonna try to lock us down and take away our rights and take away our freedoms and make us slaves as even more, because they feel they've got away with it. And they did. And they're doing it all out of fear. But and they're going to continue that. But at the same time, tremendous pushback will come. And we'll see that in America. We're actually seeing that now. But as we go into November, December, January, February, and the rest of 2022, it's going to be a very, very, very tenacious year. Now, why? Because astrologically, we're going into and this is what I'm seeing on people's hands, we're going into a Venus period, which is odd because Venus generally is a planet of love and compassion and peace and getting along with people. But Venus is in the sky in a very bad position. So astrologically, what I see it as, it's the archetype of a couple divorcing. So yes, there's love there, but when the couple starts to divorce, there's just hate. And there's and it's really the archetype of two people fighting and arguing, calling the police, and just being the worst they've ever been to each other. So that's what we're going to see in 222, where it's just going to be a year of tremendous strife, and both sides are going to just fight with each other. And and this is what the cabal wanted to call, why they called it the Agenda 21, because they wanted to have everything locked down by 221, which they did, but it's going to fall flat on their face. The ultimate thing is that's what I see. This society is going, as we know it, to fall apart. Their machinations will be over. And by 223, we'll live in a different world, in some ways better, because we'll become more provincial, more agrarian. I think our country will become more agrarian, more provincial. The government will be ignored because it will be seen as the way conservative and patriots see it. But yeah, I do see America break up into maybe smaller states, smaller provinces. Maybe red will live with red people and blue people will live with blue people. But the foundations of our society, the financial, the social construct, it'll be the cards falling in, and in that way, the real human beings build it back and get it back up again, get it back up running again. But we'll have to start again in a more simple way, in a more agrarian way, and I think it's going to be better. So much of what we see in the society, the chemtrails, the horrible pornography, the 5G, that's all going to just go the way of the dinosaur, which I think is great.
Actually, a lot of people that I talk, and some guests that I've had on the show, they've mentioned it in their own way also. But a lot of neighbors, people that I just see when we go out shopping, and just normal people on the street, they're not celebrities or athletes or anything like that. But a lot of people are worried because of what they hear on the news, what they see everywhere. They're worried that in a few years they don't think that we're going to be the superpower that we've been all these decades. Do you see any of that in people's?
You mean America?
Yeah.
Oh my God! I mean, most countries look at the Biden administration; they have no confidence in him. No, I'm very pro-America, but I have to be honest. America is over. It'll never come back to the way it was. Would I like to see the Constitution come back to where it was? No, it's not. It's the end of America, and it's the end of America the way we've known it. That culture that we had, the rugged individualist, that culture of pro-God, pro-nationalistic, that's over. And we're in the final. We're it's pretty much like when as I say, if you shoot a rhinoceros, the rhinoceros will run for a while until it falls. It doesn't just immediately fall. It runs for maybe a mile before it falls. So we're in the last throes of the greatness of America. The new generations, they've been educated in socialism and communism. They don't have that rugged individualism. that 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 everybody in America did at one point. But that doesn't mean that it's not there at all. I do see a divided America. I do see that maybe the conservatives will live in the South or in the East Coast, and the blue people will live maybe in the Southwest or something. I don't know, but we will definitely. I'm completely convinced that this society, in the way it is, financially, socially, economically, it's going to collapse. And the next year is not going to be a pretty one. But after that, we're going to become more agrarian, more simple. There is going to be a rise in God consciousness, because people will just say, well, look what all this technology has done to us. Look what these evil people have done to us. So people will become more God conscious. And it's actually astrologically predicted that in 2030, we'll go through a renaissance of spirituality, the golden age. We're actually in the golden age right now. We're in Sanskrit, it's called Danya Yuga. The yuga that we're in is a spiritual yuga. But in 2030, 2029, 30, 31, we'll see a spiritual renaissance in this world like we have not seen before. And it will be more of what the mind, body, spirit, new age, Vedic stuff is all about. The cultures of India, and the spiritual culture of that will be the spirituality of the day. And people will believe in reincarnation and transmigration of the soul and individuality in that way. So what we're seeing in the New Age movement, the culture of self-help, personal growth, that kind of stuff, that will be the spirituality of the day. And what we're seeing also is the Bhakti movements, the Shakti movements. They'll become very, very powerful. So I'm an optimist for the future, but I'm a little bit. It's dicey. The next years will be dicey.
Yeah, I think I told you last time you were on.
But it has to fall apart.
Yeah, like I said, when you were on last time, I told you you don't have to be a psychic or know numerology or palmistry to see where we could potentially be headed in the world. So I guess everybody watching didn't mean to scare you, but again, just look out your window. I think you see that coming also. And let's wrap up, Vernon, with having you talk about your books, the Institute. Start with the books. Talk about what they are, what they're about, where they can get.
Thank you, Henry. Well, my latest book is Talk to the Hand, and it's not just a how-to palmistry book, so people can read about a day in the life of a palmist or astrologer, and I give a history of numerology, palmistry, astrology. And talk about these arts. And it's the first part of the book is about 100 questions that people ask me as a palmist. So I wanted to make it a palmistry book, but at the same time, something that is a book that, let's say, Malcolm Gladwell would write, a social sciences book on palmistry. So yeah, that book is called Talk to the Hand, and it's doing very, very well. And I'm really proud of it. And my very first book was called The Secret Code on Your Hands, because that's really what it is. It's a code. And I sometimes call it palmese. But it was my very first book, and I wanted to bring something new to the science, some state-of-the-art stuff. And of course, I have the palmistry cards, and they talk a lot about fingerprints. So all my books, I've always wanted to put the state-of-the-art palmistry in, because a lot of palmistry books, although I respect any author that writes a palmistry book, but a lot of palmistry books are same old, same old, same old. And some just repeat what are there in other palmistry books, and they're not fun, they're not entertaining, they don't give a lot of history of why they're saying what they do, and it doesn't move the path of palmistry further. So my books, I want to move the path of palmistry further. My institute is about that also, researching and investigating palmistry. And my institute serves as a research and an investigative foundation, so that people from other practicing arts can ask questions, you see.
Yeah.
But palmistry is a divine science. It's a beautiful science. And everything about the human being can be understood from looking at a person's hand if you go to a qualified palmist. Um, the, the, the soul is 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair. So that's incredibly imperceptibly small. It's like if you take a hair and you take the upper tip portion of that hair and you cut it into 100 pieces, and then you cut one of those pieces into another 100, and you take one of those pieces, that's the size of the soul. It's 1/10,000th the size of the upper tip portion of the hair. Where is that soul in our body? It's in the heart.
See, and this is why I wish we had done OC Paracon in person this year, because I know after hearing your panel like this that you would have had a line out the door. People wanted to get readings from you. They can do that with you. Are you doing Zoom readings still, or no?
Yeah, I do readings over the phone. I do all my classes over Zoom. So if anybody wants a reading, they can just go to palmistryinstitute.com.
Yeah, and I'll link everything up on the video description there. So, Vernon, again, thanks a lot for doing it. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and really informative. I always learn so much every time I talk to you. That's why I love talking to you off the air and off camera. And we'll do that. I'll do that later this week, but later this month. But like I'm telling everybody, we'll finish up by wishing you and your family a safe and happy Halloween.
Thank you, Henry. Thanks for having me. I appreciate all that you do and all that you're about. I'm wishing you joy.